Hello everyone, welcome to the Consistently OK podcast. My name's Luke and I'm here, as always, with Nick.
Buongiorno.
Lovely. We're presenting to you with a bi-weekly pod centered around pop culture that we do our very best to make consistently okay for you, the listener. Each month we give you one episode where we dive into something such as a film, TV show, game, or a comic and break down our thoughts and more on it. Our second monthly episode will be our in-depth series, and this season we're focusing on Batman, from the films to the animation. We'll take you on a journey through the highs and lows, the ins and outs of the representation of Batman throughout the years. This week's episode is sponsored by good friends over at Get Your Comic Con. Here they are to tell you a little bit about themselves.
Hey super friends, my name is Neil.
My name is Martin.
And we are the hosts of the Get Your Comic Con podcast. We are here fortnightly-ish to bring you a slice of film, TV, comic book and pop culture goodness from our studio to your speakers. You can pick up our podcast on all major platforms or head to our website www.getyourcomiccon.co.uk for more.
All right, thanks for joining us then everyone. And we're going to talk about a very, very talented comic book writer. We did one of our previous episodes in season 1, we spoke about Scott Snyder, who's a very, very talented comic writer in his own right. This episode, we're going to talk about Tom King, who people may or may not know about. So hopefully if you have never heard of him, you might be interested in picking up a comic or two. If you've read his stuff but you didn't know it was by him, then you might be pleasantly surprised. Yeah. So I would say I'm a pretty big fan of Tom King, because a lot of this stuff he's done over the last few years have meant quite a lot to me as a comic reader. I feel there's some really, really good stuff that he's worked on, and yeah, I really enjoy it. You're a fan as well, Nick, hence why we're doing the episode, I assume?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've been quite keen about doing this for a little while, actually. I think at one point I wanted to do it in season 1, and then I don't think we got the chance to. But yeah, Tom King's like just a really awesome writer, and I think he always works with really interesting artists. But interestingly, like I remember when I first read some of his Batman run, it wasn't that I was like hostile towards it, but I was like, oh, you're taking over from Snyder and Capullo, like how does anybody follow that? And I think reading it I was a bit like and then it just turned into this thing and I was like, oh fuck yes. And then I read Mr. Miracle and it was gone.
Mr. Miracle, I mean, so essentially we're going to talk about several comics that he's worked on. We're both going to just talk a little bit back and forth about it. So there will be spoilers, of course. If you've not read any of these comics, then we will dive into some things that go on in the episodes, in the comics. But for those of you who don't know who Tom King is, just a very small background. I'm not going to do his biography because that would just be crazy, because I've not like stalked the guy online or anything. But just from my own knowledge, that he's basically been writing comics for several years. He was in the CIA and things before he started writing comics. I believe he might have been writing comics before. I have no idea actually, but he has some big hitters come out in the last few years, basically. So whatever he's worked on before is essentially well known to readers. You'd have to dive into his back catalogue and go into that. But the first thing I read of his was back in 2014. It was Grayson. He did a few issues of that. I'm pretty sure he did 16 or 17 issues before he moved on to something else, and then it was taken over by another creative team. So he's done Grayson. He's done Omega Man, which is essentially DC's version of Omega Men, which is essentially DC's, Jesus, as a mouthful, DC's Guardians of the Galaxy. Then he did Sheriff of Babylon, which was originally called Sheriff of Baghdad, but then it changed because of, I don't know if it was a copyright thing. It was something linked to some promotion of something, I think. So they changed it to Sheriff of Babylon, which was his first comic he did with Mitch Gerads, who is pretty much his number one go-to artist on several things now. And he did Vision, and then he did Mr. Miracle, which is such an amazing comic, and we're definitely going to talk about that. Yes. Along with, more importantly, a very controversial, but very long 85-issue run of Batman. And he's doing comics now, Strange Adventures, Rorschach, and he also did Heroes in Crisis. He's Eisner Award winning. He's done bunches of one-shots, which we probably won't talk about, but if you are interested in his one-shots, I strongly recommend the Swamp Thing Winter Special.
Oh my God! Yes.
Man, I've slid many words already. It's a terrible start for what will likely be a long podcast. So if you're listening, it's only going to get worse from here.
Luke says as he's drinking whiskey.
Yeah, of course. I wish I had a whiskey in my hand. And yeah, he's a very talented writer, and also he's just he. Should we just start with a couple of initial thoughts on him before we jump into the comics? God, sure. I just said dump into the comics. Jesus Christ almighty. Before we dump into the comics, I promise you we've done many episodes that have been okay. Before we jump into his comic, consistently okay, yeah. He seems to take, and obviously two of the main comics we're going to talk about, Mr. Miracle and Vision. What I like so much about Tom King off the bat is that he's taken two very Vision is a well-known character, but he hasn't really had much of his own thing going on, and definitely with Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle, and he's done these huge runs on them, or not huge, but 12 issues mainly is his thing, and he's just taken both characters to the next level and given us fantastic stories. Obviously Batman has been worked on, and like what you said, like we'll talk about it, but following up on Snyder, what a hugely daunting task after that New 52 run from Scott Snyder. And I think he's just he's nailed pretty much everything he's done. Obviously Batman is 50-50, as everyone would say. But yeah, I think he's awesome. Like you said at the beginning, he's a really talented writer. And I think a lot of stuff that he's touching, and why probably DC have given him so much, they gave him the keys to Batman, and things like Rorschach as well, who's he's a big character in the Watchmen, and obviously since the storylines between DC and Watchmen universes as well, there's a lot of trust there, I think. What are your initial thoughts on Tom King, or your thoughts on him in general?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, like I was saying, I just think he's a really smart writer, in the sense that all of his books have like cover wise anyway, they're like very colorful, and like you can see it and you're like, oh, that looks like a really fun book, and then you read it and there's just so much heart and so much like emotive story writing, that's a good one, storytelling that
welcome to the club, mate. We're all over the place.
There's so much of it that really impacts you, and I think that's the thing about him that makes him such a good writer, is that he can really just pack a punch where you wouldn't expect one. We'll get onto the nitty gritty of Mr. Miracle, but just a story there that I remember when I first saw Mr. Miracle, I didn't pick it up because I was just like, oh, it looks just, I don't know, it just looked colorful and just like, yeah, okay, like it looked like the art looked really good, but I was like, I don't have an interest in the story. And then by like the second issue, everyone was like, this is it, it's like fucking mental. And so I think I picked up like a second or third printing at that point of the first issue, and I was like, right, no idea what to expect. This, open it up, and yeah, like the first couple of pages, I was just like, oh fuck, shit, like this is another level of storytelling that I just didn't expect at all. And he kept doing that, like all of his books, like we'll get onto his Batman run, but some of that I was just like, fuck, you're nailing this.
Well, why don't we just, again, Batman is obviously the elephant in the room. Of course, we don't have to really go into any particular order, because I think a lot of his comics just stand out individually. But let's just talk about Mr. Miracle. Obviously, we're both huge fans of Mr. Miracle, and you're 100% right about the emotional stuff. I mean, for instance, again, very big warning that if you've not read his comic, then it's full of spoilers. But it's the first issue of Mr. Miracle is obviously very deep, because it's a suicide attempt. Obviously, it's you're straight in there, and you go back to just you saying about not picking up, exactly the same. I'd read Vision as a single issue series, so I really enjoyed Tom King, but I actually missed the boat on Mr. Miracle. The first time I actually got wind of how well it was doing, considering how much I read up on comics, I think it was by that time it was the fourth or fifth issue maybe.
Yeah. And
I'd seen the artwork, and I'd seen who was working. I saw that was Mitch Gerard's work on it with him. And it was too late by that point. It was, I don't know what printing it was on for the first or second issues at least, but I had seen the buzz going around about it now. And I just thought, I'm just going to wait. Typically with DC, with their 12 issue runs, they they get delayed and everything. So I thought I'm going to wait it out and I'll get there. And I'm glad I did. I'm glad I read it all in one huge batch, because it's epic, but it's really emotional, and you kind of you make of it what you think may or may not be happening with this suicide. Like, is it a suicide? Is he just in between things? Did he die? Is it all this stuff going on? But he really nails the emotional storytelling in it, because it's very much it's like a father-son story in different levels. So, I mean, for one, you've got this Scott Free character, and again, a reason I didn't pick it up is because it was Mr. Miracle, a guy that I really had not read anything about, essentially. I knew a lot more about Vision, being a big Marvel fan, than I did about Mr. Miracle, so I just kind of thought, okay, I'm kicking myself, because I wish I had that first issue and that first printing of Mr. Miracle, and I wish I had all the single issues. But yeah, so it's a father-son, the emotional tie there between a father and a son, because bloody Scott Free's father is Darkseid, and then he's a father his own to his own boy. And he's got like a stepbrother, I guess. No, not a stepbrother. What do you call it? Is it his stepbrother?
Yeah.
Brother-in-law?
Brother-in-law,
No?
yeah.
Brother-in-law. Family. He's got other family members as well.
Extended family.
And then he's got a wife who is an absolute beast of a woman, in the nicest possible way, in Big Bertha is her name, isn't it?
Yeah, Big Barda.
Big Barda, yeah. And there's a load going on, but the first few pages, he's like committed suicide essentially, and he's bleeding out on the floor, and it's dark, and it packs a heavy punch from the beginning all the way to the end. Yeah, you dive in. I mean, you've got plenty. Obviously, you love the comic as much as me, so
it is that sort of like I remember, like, even just flipping through it now, like the opening few pages, because it's all that like kind of TV broadcast thing, and it sets up the story of who Mr. Miracle is. Basically, it's like, this is it, and it sets up the fourth world. And for readers who aren't aware of that kind of thing, you're like, oh, it's this pulpy kind of throwback. And I think that makes it interesting. And, you get a line which becomes synonymous with the whole series, as well as just it's become this pop culture thing now, where like it's the first time that you get Darkseid is, which is something that as the book goes on, it just becomes this big fucking statement. And then, you sort of get hit by this like full splash page of Mr. Miracle's face or Scott Free's face. And then the next is double page spread, and you're like, oh shit, he slit his wrists. What the fuck? And that's just when, from then on, I thought the book was just hitting every level of storytelling really well. And I think part of it is that they told it in the Watchmen format, the 9-panel grid. And so much of that is about time. So much of it is about the moment-to-moment transitions and seeing characters sort of live and breathe. And as an artist, like, Mitch nails this, because having written a couple of 9-panel grids and like worked with Harry on them, like, they are a pain, because you are just following a character like doing things, and you have to make sure everything's right and it works as moment to moment. You leave very little up to the kind of reader's imagination of what happens between the panels. And Mitch nails it, and so does Tom King's script. Like, it feels like you really do live with these characters, and the like burden on Scott's shoulders, I think you just feel issue to issue. It's just so well done, from like everything, even the lettering's like bloody incredible.
Lettering is fantastic. I was actually going to mention the lettering, because with the way Mitch has done it, because a lot of it's so distorted as well, and it's chaotic, like because it's 9-panel grid throughout the whole thing, pretty much. I think it is 9 panels all the way through, isn't it, actually?
I think bar the opening, which is like the TV, which is like 6 panels, but I mean, it still fits in the grid. Like, it's still a 9-panel grid.
It's obviously to do with the lettering over that as well, with all the distortion and the flashbacks and everything. It looks really good, and it all comes together so well. Like, artist, letterer, writer, colorist, and everything. It's spot on. I can't remember who the colorist is.
Jordi Belair.
Oh yeah, no, it's not.
I thought it is.
Is it?
I swear,
No, Jamie Rich.
I swear in the first
No,
issue.
that's the editor. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Geordie Bellaire's the colorist, and
No,
Clayton.
Mitch Gerris is the colorist. Inks
Oh,
and Colors.
maybe it's just the opening bit then.
Because Geordie Belair did the colors for another one of his comics. I don't think.
Sorry. Yeah,
Vision.
I was reading off of the 6-panel opener thing, like the TV broadcast thing. That's Geordie Belair.
Okay.
Yes. Who is also
Strange
awesome.
They switched, isn't it, so early on?
Yeah,
it is awesome. I love the opening you said with the double phrase spread when he's cut his wrist. I don't love that bit. I love the visual of it, but that is the bit that has the credits on.
Yeah,
like,
it's cool.
I had that as a first issue, and I read that, I'd be like, holy shit! Like that's really cool. And it's the 9-panel thing really works.
I love that as well. Like on that page, like just looking at it now, the thing that like really hits me with it is the fact that the last piece of dialogue on that page, besides the Meet Mr. Miracle thing, is the men who challenge him and death himself, and he's just there like fucking on the floor. It's just the whole book is like that as well. Like the whole book just continues to give these moments where you're just like, fuck. It's just
actually looking at it now. I don't know if I've got this correctly, because that bit when he cuts his wrist, because I've never read this as a single issue. I've only read it collected. Like I have the deluxe one in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
But that first issue, then does that end? Where does that end? Does that the credits with him cutting his wrist? That must be the second issue then.
No, that is the first issue. So the TV bit, I think, was basically like a setup or like a one shot. Because it's
then the first issue,
because you've got Mike Norton on Illustrator, so it's not Mitch.
Because of the Geordie Belair stuff, that's what confused me. I was like, I swear it was Mitch Gerris.
I thought it was
Mitch.
I
wasn't sure about the colours, but I didn't know Geordie Belair was on this until that bit, so that's just thrown me a little bit. But
also Nick Darrington on covers, like awesome.
Covers are great.
So fucking good.
My collection alone, not just because of like the value or anything, because I don't tend to sell comics, but just having these. It's like for me with the White Knight. Like I love having the White Knight covers because they're so nice, but I have all the variants as well. But this is something I would have had. Like if I could have the issues 1 to 12 of this, would have loved it. But
it is awesome.
I missed the boat.
Yeah, I was just about in there. I think from issue 4 onwards, I had issues like first printings. The first 3 I didn't, but
because you and I were talking about this, because this was 2017, so this is a year after Vision. So you were working at the comic shop then, weren't you?
Yeah,
this was retro.
Yeah, so this would have been my second year in the comic shop, and
you must have been telling me, because I feel like you were talking to me about this when it was coming out.
Honestly, so the when this book came out, like I said, because I was late to it, by issue 2 or 3, when I seen that buzz, I was like, right, this next printing's due out. I'm ordering like fucking 9 of them or whatever it is. We were a really small store, so we used to just order small quantities. I'm talking like you'd order like 4 copies, unless it was something like Metal or Batman issue 1 or something, you'd order more. But Mr. Miracle was something that I was like, everybody is talking about this, so I'm going to order like 9 of the issue 1, and I'm just going to accept that. And then it turned up, I read it and was like, that was something that's really special. We've got the other issues coming in. And I remember talking to like basically all of our subscribers at that time going, have you heard of Mr. Miracle? And they were like, well, no. And I can't even remember how I sold them on it, because again, it's like obscure character. It's like, how do you sell an obscure character? Like, how do you say, okay, so it's about this like superhero. But
I mean, now you would say, if it's coming out now, like with something like Strange Adventures, you say Tom King's writing it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it became.
You read Vision, you read Mr. Miracle, you're like this. But it's at that point, it's a hard sell, isn't it? Because you've got Sheriff of Babylon and I guess a Mega Man, but Vision's only just come out, so a lot of people probably wouldn't have read it.
Yeah, like I still haven't read Vision. That's still something that I need to read. I know, shocking. Also, so like Vision, when that came out, as a question for you, Was that post Ultron?
That was. You mean Age of Ultron? Film Age of Ultron?
Age of Ultron. Yeah. Because I'm wondering basically whether like he taps into Vision being like an interesting character before Ultron put him on screen.
No, I think I mean I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure Vision came out before Age of Ultron.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wasn't sure.
I don't think either were linked necessarily. I think Vision has had more success since WandaVision, probably in a way, not more success because it won awards, but I think it's probably gained more popularity because essentially that is where the WandaVision idea comes from. The Vision is in a family, although it's the other way around with Scarlet Witch. But I don't think so. I don't remember. I don't remember sitting down at Age of Ultron and thinking, "Oh yeah, there's the Vision from the comics." I don't think it did anything either way around. Actually,
okay. I was just curious.
Answers your question.
Yeah, I was just really curious whether there was like a, like whether people read that going into Ultron or whatever. Because again, I haven't read it. I know there is an element of it in WandaVision. But yeah, Vision's just been on my list for so long.
Age of Ultron actually came out in 2015, so actually there's 2 years. No, 2015. They both came out at the same time.
Interesting. Marvel,
which would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because so Vision came out with the all new, all different Marvel era, which basically shoved everything back to number one. Only a few years later for them to shove everything back to the 700 mark to
then go back
just to confuse things every month. So yes, I guess they came out. I mean, I think Age of Ultron came out early in the year. I think Vision was later in the year, so they probably jumped on that bandwagon a little bit. But again, it's Tom King's version of Vision is just so different in a way. Yeah. It's not different because it's Vision, but it's so dark compared to the MCU stuff. So yeah, I don't think either. I definitely didn't read Vision, obviously, because I don't even recall it. I don't think I saw Vision and thought, oh yeah, MCU Vision. I think I just thought, wow, Vision's got his own comic series, but I pretty much did that with every, it doesn't take a lot for me to be like, like Blade has got his own Marvel series again, or hey, Jubilee from X-Men has got her own series. What's she up to? Who's writing it? Don't care. I'll read it. But difficult to sell something like Mr. Miracle because again, as an avid comic reader, it didn't. Even though I just read Vision, it didn't even. I must have seen it in previews. And for those who don't know what previews is, it's basically a monthly catalog. A lot of comic stores order their comics for customers. I didn't even. Just flew right by me. So probably because I saw the words Mr. Miracle and thought, no, don't read it. No.
I remember like trying to get hold of those fourth or third printings or whatever they were of issue 1, because the printing I had was like a black and white sketch cover with like a red title on it. And I think that was third or fourth printing. And I remember trying to get hold of those were like really hard. I was like emailing Diamond and I was just like, where can I get this? Like, is it possible? And they were like, yeah, you've got it on order. We don't know when it will show up, but it's coming. And then, I just remember seeing it on our order note. I was like, sick. And I think I sold it off of saying that, because we had a lot of like readers in our store who read like image books. And I think I sold it off of the fact that I was like, look, this is like an image book, but in DC. And I think, and I think people were like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. And this was also at the time, I think, when DC were like hammering it with titles. Like they had a lot that was coming out that was really good. And so there was definitely like a faith in like, oh, DC are doing really well. So when you finished it, if you waited for the graphic novel, did you then order loads of the graphic novel, or did you just order a few and then?
Yeah, so the thing is, when I'm reading up on things, especially when you do something like you go through previews, like the single issue ones, because we have subscribers, obviously, like you say, like you try and get your subscribers interested, but because I didn't read it, it's not something I was avidly looking for in the subscriptions or comics. Like no one had said to me. Sometimes you get people that are like, anything Scott Snyder does, I want it. Like I want that, I want the variants, but I had no one at that time that was obviously saying anything by Tom King. So it just kind of went under the radar a little bit. But if it was a graphic novel, I would have taken it in anyway, because I would have noticed then it was Tom King and I would have thought, right, this is collected, I'm going to get in. But yeah, when it came out, because of the hype around it, I remember, I think there's been 3 versions of it now. There was the standard graphic novel version, which is the one I'm pretty sure I saw in your hand. And then there was a deluxe edition. I think there's even been another deluxe edition since, or there's definitely 2. So yeah, I took in several. I remember pushing it quite hard. It was definitely one. You know, if you get someone coming into the comic shop and they're saying, like, give me some titles to read, give me some new superhero comics to read, you could try and get in a Mr. Miracle on there, because it's an unknown superhero and you can sell it in that aspect that you probably have never read this character before, but this is a fucking great comic. This is by Tom King, he's written Vision and, you know, Sheriff of Babylon, and he did Batman for 85 issues. And, you know, you say someone's done Batman for 85 issues, you're probably going to be intrigued a little bit. So yes, to answer your question in a very roundabout way, Nick, yes, I took in a lot, and I took in a few of the deluxe edition, and still now it's something that I would want back in. If we'd sold several, I would make sure we had, you know, 3 or 4 on the shelves, and one that I would hope that the staff at the shop that I work with would have all tried to read as well, because that's how good I think it is.
Yeah. Do you have like, out of Mr. Miracle, do you have a favorite page that you'd go and kind of go like, this is it? And for anybody who's listening to this, I will then put a video out on our YouTube, so people go to YouTube to watch this, and we will show a picture of the page.
There is a favorite page, and I think it's wide regarded as one of the best pages in comic history, as far as I know, because it is that good. And it's not the best page. It's not actually the best page to sell the story, because it's almost unrelated. But there's basically a page where Scott Free, Mr. Miracle, he's on Apokolips, and he is with his son and his wife, and they're visiting dear old dad Darkseid, and everything's on the cusp of going completely bonkers. But he brings a veggie tray, like a platter, and he says that he's bought one of those basically to lighten the mood. And this page that we're talking about is basically Darkseid dipping in like carrot sticks into hummus and eating it. And it's just so good, because he's such a lunatic Darkseid, and he's one of the worst villains in the world. And then just all of a sudden, amongst all this horrible and dark and emotional stuff, he's there eating a veggie tray, and it's awesome. And that is the page. I would show that to customers, and I'd say, so yeah, this is blah, 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 but look at this as well. Like, here's Darkseid eating a veggie tray. You can't get that shit anywhere else, my friend. Like, pick up this comic, because surely you want to know why he's eating a veggie tray. And then look a few pages later, it's all kicking off. So it's a great page. It's really, it must have been a kick when Mitch Gerads saw the script and was like, haha. Excellent. It's actually it's like my go-to background on like social media. It's Darkseid dipping a stick into hummus. So
it's amazing.
So good.
So good.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Should we just dip in between other comics as well? We'll likely come back to Mr. Miracle.
I think so.
Should we address Batman first, or should I talk about Vision as we've talked about a little bit? I'm not going to go into too much detail about Vision. Obviously, you've not read it, so I can't. I won't go too heavy into spoilers. I don't care about anyone else, but you, Nick, I won't do any spoilers for. That's not cool. So Vision came out a year before Mr. Miracle. Like I said at the beginning, it's great that Tom King can take a character like Vision and Mr. Miracle and Adam Strange and Strange Adventures, and I guess Rorschach, by giving him his own series, is that it's a relatively unknown character in terms of what's come before. But he's such a big part of Marvel Vision. Like, he's in the Avengers, and he's been involved in everything, and he's done some crazy things to save the day, and he's done some things that probably he shouldn't have done. But he's essentially an android that wants to fit in. And that is what Vision is in a nutshell. It's basically a story about Vision, who is basically taking orders, and he's done the right thing, and he's a really good superhero, and he wants to have a normal life. So he moves to the suburbs, and he makes himself a family, a wife and 2 kids. And everything that goes on around him, just no matter how hard they try to fit in, everything goes wrong. Like, there's death, and there's violence, and death is violence, obviously, and there's heart, and there's just this raw emotion in it that just page after page after page, you're just thinking, this poor fucking guy. Like, he can't catch a break. Like, here he is. He's moved to the suburbs. He's made a family, and then he's got a 9 to 5 job at the White House, and his kids are going to school and they're trying to fit in, but he just can't. Like, he just cannot catch a break. And it's a really good comic, and I think Tom King really stands out because it's kind of hard hitting, and it's different, especially the era that came out with this all different Marvel era. It's the one that everything else just felt very similar. Like, bam, this is a different version of Iron Man. Bam, this is Captain America is now fucking Hydra and all this stuff. It kind of felt like all these beats were similar. Like, why do they have to rebrand? But if Marvel did a black label, like DC has done, then this would have been the one that would have been on there, and it would have set the bar for everything that came over it. And I don't think Marvel have really replicated that since. It won awards, and I think it really put Tom King up there in terms of comic writer, because I think during this run, he got signed to DC as an exclusive writer, but he was allowed to finish up his Vision run. I think he had 3 or 4 issues left. So that's what this did. Obviously, his other work as well, because he'd already worked with Vertigo for Sheriff of Babylon, and he'd done Grayson and stuff. So DC, he was obviously on DC's radar, and obviously, I assume things were going relatively well. I'm pretty sure Omega Man was cancelled, but I think maybe he got to wrap up the story. But this Vision one, for me, that's what put him on my radar. Though I'm saying that ironically because I missed Mr. Miracle not long after it. But it's a great comic. In our comic shop, we had it as comic of the month, which isn't going to make or break anyone's decision whether they should read it based on the comic shop that I work at. But it's in terms of that, trusting what me and my staff think and the people that I work for think, because you may not have ever been to that comic shop, which is called Outland, by the way, in Norway, if you're ever around. Wonderful comic shop. It's so good. I'm very lucky to be working there. And it's that sounded really sarcastic, but generally it's like the best job I've ever had. So it's so good. It's just full of comics and awesome things. So if you're ever in Norway, please stop by, especially Stavanger store, because that's where I am. And I will talk to you about Vision. Unless I've ruined everything for you with spoilers, then don't ask for Luke. So I've lost my train of thought now, because I can't remember what I was going to say. I promoted my store. I think I promoted it pretty badly at the beginning because of sarcasm, but it wasn't sarcasm. It's a fantastic. It's a really good comic, and same as Mr. Miracle. Like, you keep it in the store because, again, it's one of those. You get people coming in, they want to read Marvel. Tell me something that's good in Marvel. Like, you can push Spider-Man and Iron Man and Avengers and all that stuff, but there are some gems out there that are nothing to do with the mainstream characters. Like, mainstream is in these big names, but obviously Vision will be now more well known now because of something like WandaVision, even more so than the other MCU films that followed it, preceded it. Sorry, but it's just such an easy one to say, because it's like, this is a different take on Vision. If I said to you, oh, it's a Vision comic, you probably think it's going to be all the bells and whistles of a superhero saving the day and stuff, but it's not. It's pretty much the opposite of that. In fact, he actually goes against the superheroes in it to save essentially what was him trying to fit into, or trying to find some normality, being an android trying to be a human. So I don't know if I've sold it well at all, but it's just
I think you have like. Sorry, you finished.
No, just because I'm trying to not say any spoilers. It's hard to sell something when I can't. Well, it's not hard to sell something. Again, not coming off one of my day-to-day job of trying to sell comics, but I can sell anything. But I would really love to dissect it more and just say about it. But it's I pretty much said all I would say to try and hook someone in, I think.
Yeah, I love that about Tom King as well. Kind of going into another of his books that I wanted to talk about, but and again, there isn't a lot for me to say about this because again, I know it was something that was received kind of 50-50, but the way with Vision that you're describing it in terms of you think it was going to be this big superhero bells and whistles thing, but really it's a much darker and a much more personal story. something like Heroes in Crisis, which on the surface is one of the, to me anyway, is one of the most interesting superhero stories. Like the execution on it, I think it's maybe 2 issues too long, which I think were added. I remember when I went into it, it was like 6-part, and then I think it turned into an 8-part or 7-part something.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was like, I don't know whether you're going to need two more issues. I feel like it's a pretty tight, succinct story. But the core story of that being, there is a place that people go, like superheroes go to, where they deal with their mental health. Like that these superheroes are fragile, and that that's something that needs to be looked at and nurtured, and like what happens when a superhero is kind of fractured mentally. That core story is so interesting and so smart, and it takes a writer like Tom King to kind of look at superheroes and go, okay, like, but what about if they do struggle? Like who's addressing that? And the best part of Heroes in Crisis are the 9 panel grids where it's just a single character and they're like talking effectively to the reader, which is sort of about like their state of mind. It's about how they're doing, and there's something really raw and honest and a little bit like heartbreaking when you read it, when it's a certain character that you like and you're like, fuck.
Yeah.
I think he does that stuff really well. Again, because you go into Heroes in Crisis being like, it's a murder mystery and there's superheroes and all this stuff, and then you're sort of hit sporadically with these 9 panel grids where it's like really breaking down these characters in a kind of way that I don't think I'd seen before had I not read his like Batman run or Mr. Miracle or something. This is just on a bigger scale because it's dealing with some of the more prominent DC characters, and I think that makes it an interesting series alone. I feel like it's just an interesting one to look at, especially as a writer, because it's bold in its storytelling, and I know some people really didn't like it and other people thought it was pretty good and interesting, and I think I sort of land on this ground of saying like it is really bold, and it took me a little while to kind of land on that view of it and kind of saying like, you know what, like he was actually doing something that I feel like maybe it's a little bit too early in comic books to do it. I don't know.
Do you think maybe it's if you take like Vision, Mr. Miracle, now Adam Strange as well, like that sort of way he does things, which I love as well, and I did actually really enjoy Heroes in Crisis as well. I know it did get 50-50 reception with some people, but do you think it's because we're willing to accept the way he writes characters that we don't really know a lot about? Or I know there are people out there that know a lot about them, but because of the way, we've already said a million times, like the way I kind of looked over Mr. Miracle, not because it was Tom King as the writer, but because I didn't know a lot about the character, and people thought the same about the Vision, and probably the same with Strange Adventures. Like Strange Adventures would be the same as Mr. Miracle to me if it was the other way around, but because it's not, because Strange Adventures is Tom King and Mitch Gerads again, I'm going to read it. I know about it now, but he can do these things with these characters because they're not necessarily beloved characters. But then again, why some people were not so keen on his Batman run, was for similar things. I think maybe that's the issue, isn't it, with Heroes in Crisis and Batman, is people expect him to cater to a certain way of writing those characters. So to be so bold and handle them differently, something like Heroes in Crisis hasn't been as well received as it has been with all these other ones, which is mental really to think that he's won awards for these other ones as well. Given the bigger names, he's been sort of wrongly in my eyes as well, sort of been held accountable for God knows what, especially having his run cancelled, which is mental.
I feel like in some ways he's a little bit like Snyder, like Zack Snyder in that sense, in that I feel like what I love about Zack and his take of superheroes is that he looks at them in a sense of like, how can I break them down and like really crumble like the hero persona. It's like, how can I just kind of cut into that and then build them up? And I feel like Tom King does that in the sense that it's like he will take a character and like absolutely break that character, and then you get the journey of like that character getting better and achieving things. And I think there's a real sense of fulfillment in that sense of storytelling, especially with something like Batman, where, you know, he had a 100-issue run planned and he got 85 issues into it. And a lot of that run, there is a lot of stuff in there which is like, it's heartbreaking, and it's like, fuck, like Batman is vulnerable. And I feel like, yeah,
that's what they didn't like, isn't it?
Yeah, it is that like. It's that sense of like feeling uncomfortable. Like you shouldn't. I think there's this sense that like you shouldn't feel uncomfortable watching a superhero film because they're superheroes and they're there to save the day. But I love that bold storytelling. That it's like, do you know what? I'm willing to break a superhero to tell a story that's different and interesting. You know, that's the White Knight. Like White Knight through and through is you know, Batman isn't that good. Like actually, Jack Napier's got a point, and that makes it interesting. That makes it cool. And yeah, I feel like Heroes in Crisis is on the surface, you know, that it's just, here's a really interesting concept. And I feel like that alone was a really hard sell. I remember when I was at the comic shop and I was kind of like, look, like this is going to be a series that's about effectively seeing the inner workings of a superhero and breaking them down. And there was a lot of resistance for that. It was sort of like, I don't know if I want to read something about that. I don't want to know that, you know, there's this other side to superheroes.
The sort of stuff I want to read, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just interesting.
Like I said about Marvel being a lot of the same old things. Like, I've been reading a lot of Marvel omnibuses recently, like catching up on some of the old school stuff. And yeah, of course, a lot of it's pretty corny and stuff like that. But then, you know, some of it, if you dive deeper into just a bit later than the early years and stuff, it's so good. But I feel like a lot of it's just some of the more modern stuff is just the same stuff, but they're just throwing it together, thinking like we have to get this name out there or we have to change this. Whereas, you know, for someone like Tom King to really think like I'm gonna break these characters down in a completely different way. And with his Batman, I mean, do you think his Batman run would have worked better as a Black Label thing? Do you think it would, if you put that Batman run on Black Label and let Tom King do even more with it, do you think it works better as a Batman series than how it was received as the main series? Because
yeah,
I would assume he had to cater to several editors.
Yeah, I think definitely when you're telling, I mean, it's like 6 2/3, isn't it? I mean, like if you look at Snyder and Capullo's run, like they do something similar where they do break down Batman and they change Batman. Like fuck, he made Jim Gordon Batman.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like part of the thing is it's how far you push the characters, and I think Tom King is pushing Batman and Bruce Wayne to like the furthest limit. And I feel like, especially with Rebirth, that whole thing was like there is an interconnectivity between all these characters, and so when Batman's going on this really personal journey, at the same time you've got him in like Justice League or you've got him in like the Trinity book or something, and you're a bit like,
yeah, the continuity felt a little bit off, didn't it? Didn't really sit.
Yeah,
whereas if it were like Scott Snyder's Batman, it was always
it felt like
that was the Batman, like he was doing the same shit in the
and so I do feel like if he'd been on a Black Label book, the thought of going like, how does this fit into the wider perspective wouldn't be there, and you just accept it for like, okay, this is a lone Batman tale.
Because the Batman Catwoman, that is Black Label, isn't it? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I haven't read that yet because I'm waiting for like the graphic on it.
See, but that's the thing. The reason I was saying about the Batman being on Black Label is because that worked. Batman Catwoman. I mean, I thought I liked his Batman run, but in the back of my mind, as I've been reading it over the last few years, it's like I can see why people think this isn't the right fit for the main Batman run. But I enjoyed it. But I can see why others couldn't. But then it's like almost sudden like the shackles have come off a bit with Batman Catwoman. So I don't know the in and outs of when the series got cancelled, because it all happened quite quickly. Like bam, he's being taken off at issue 85, but he's getting this spin-off series of Batman Catwoman. So, you know, you kind of wonder if he was kind of like, yeah, just let me loose on this. Like, I'm happy to drop it and do this instead.
Yeah. I know. I remember reading an interview with him and he said like the end was like, or somebody had said it at some point that the ending of like his run would be pretty out there. So I do wonder whether it got to that point of saying like, look, your ending is so out there, it doesn't fit with the main arc. So go do it in Batman, Catwoman. So I wonder whether, because has that finished yet, or is it still going?
No, I think I just read issue.
Is it 5? Yeah, I thought it's 5.
I think I'm on 5. I'm pretty sure that's 12 issues as well.
Yeah, it is, and I feel like that is just the back half of his run. Like those 12 is sort of like where it would have gone.
It is. I mean, it pretty much adds up, doesn't it? He's only a few issues shy of it, isn't he? Plus, I think he's got 3. No, there were 3 annuals in the Batman run of the 85. It was 85 issues and 3 annuals. But I'm pretty sure there's a Christmas issue of Batman Catwoman coming out. Cool. I think I remember seeing something about that anyway, or maybe it's just a standard issue. But it's weird at the moment reading because he's actually, again, for someone who was cancelled on Batman, obviously you've got Batman Catwoman, you've got Rorschach, and you've got Strange Adventures
and Supergirl. He's got a
Supergirl. Yeah. Again, that's something that I can't believe that he's obviously, like I said, being given the keys and stuff, but they're not, because they've cancelled him. Like, here he is writing 4 big DC properties. I mean, he must be writing more DC things than, I don't know how much Brian Michael Bendis writes at the moment, but he must be the one who's doing the most out of all of those.
It feels like there is a lot, and it's all different as well. Like that's the thing that's really cool, and like going onto his kind of Batman run in a bit of detail. The thing that I liked about it was that so much of it felt like each arc sort of felt like a different thing, but was continuing like the personality of it, like the core emotion that Batman was going through was carried through it, but you'd have clear arcs. And like some of the arcs I thought were a little bit too long, like War of Jokes and Riddles. I remember thinking that's quite long, but I remember thinking at the time, if I read that as a graphic novel, it probably would work. It was just kind of like, it felt like it was going on a bit. But then his stuff with Bane was really good.
Bane was awesome, wasn't
it?
Like again, really, spoilers, but man, good. I like the fact that he was the big bad. Cool.
I loved. I think it's like issue 23 is the one with Swamp Thing, where like Swamp Thing's dad dies.
Yeah, I don't know what issue it is, but yeah,
that is fucking incredible, and it's got like the best art ever. In that it's like that double page spread where it's Bruce and Swamp Thing's like sat in the library, and there's like a little like flower and spray. It's just so fucking cool.
There's a lot of good artists on his run as well, isn't there? He has pretty much everyone he works with, like Clayman, who's the guy who did he was what else was he on? He's doing Batman Catwoman. That's what he's doing. And obviously, Mitch Jarvis, and he had the artist who did 3 Jokers recently with Jeff Johns.
Yes.
Jason
Fabok.
Yeah. Jason Fabok.
Yeah, and like he also worked with who she's like I absolutely love her art, like Joelle Jones. Like the issues where it was like Batman and Catwoman, and she would do the Catwoman sections. Fucking hell, like I get emotional just thinking about it, because her art is stunning. And again, she had a grasp on that character that was just like, this is so good. And I feel like he did that, like his storytelling of Batman and Catwoman and their relationship, and this like strain between like Batman trying to do the right thing, but being in love with somebody who doesn't always do the right thing. And I love
the Batman Catwoman stuff. I think
it's so good, like so good.
I love them. I think it's Mitch Jarvis who does some of the issues with a lot of the Batman Catwoman love.
Yeah.
I think it's his. He did like 3 or 4 issues. I can't remember which issues it was, but I love them. I don't love the love bits. Well, I do love the love bits, but there's a lot of semi-nudity in Batman Catwoman. There's a lot of Selena underwear shots, which is good. But I just thought it was good. I didn't hate it. I didn't get all the criticism. I was a bit gutted when he got cancelled on it. I thought it was just unjust. But again, like I said, my gut feeling was like this should have been a Black Label thing, but you can't do 85 issues on a Black Label, I guess.
Yeah,
yes, it's just a shame. It's a shame he didn't get to 100 issues with it, because I think that's what he deserved. And again, think about how much he's writing now. Maybe it was like a mutual thing where it's like, yeah, I'm happy to finish this in this series, and it'll be better for me and the people that enjoy what I'm doing, because he's obviously in Batman Catwoman, he's gone a lot more in depth into like Joker territory and things like that as well. And
I think as well. Sorry, you finished your thing.
No, it's just giving us the Phantom character, Phantasm.
Yeah,
the one that was in the animation, but it's the first time been in a comic. So,
and Kite
in the long run, it was in Kite Man. Yeah,
awesome.
It's just really a shame that you get to his 100 issues, but again, it's given us all these other things like. I mean, Strange Adventures is. I mean, I'll talk about that. You finish what you're saying about Batman before I jump into that.
I was going to say with Batman as well. Like the thing that I think is super impressive with that is that they were telling that story like bi-weekly.
Yes.
To be putting out that kind of content that quickly was crazy. Like having done 6-7 comics here, they take forever. Like they take so long to do. And that's if everything is going well. To be able to do 2 issues a month that are of that quality, and the storytelling holds up with each issue, and even like the in-between issues. I remember like where you'd have like 2 issues in between an arc. Those issues were like really good. Like there was so much like emotive stuff in it. I think there's one that's like a date night. It was like Lois and Clark, and that's so cool. Like it works really well, and it's just interesting. And
it's crazy where he fits it all in, really, because I'm just looking now. Obviously, he started that run in 2016. I mean, he must have had some issues in the bag already, like a sort of Robert Kirkman thing, like with Oblivion Song, where I think he'd written 30 issues before they released issue 1, so they're well ahead of it. But
such a good book.
I mean, he's doing that, and then at the same time, he's borderline starting Mr. Miracle in 2017. Plus, he fits in Heroes in Crisis in that, and you got to think he started planning things something like Strange Adventures. But it's two issues a week that's Jeff Lemire type. Like we always talk about Jeff Lemire. Like, how the fuck is he written it feels like there was a stage about a year ago where you and I were talking about him every year, like every week, sort of like, hey, Jeff Lemire's doing this with this
and
guy.
Again,
Jeff Lemire's doing this.
All amazing. I feel like the Jeff Lemire podcast is coming, like where we will talk about Jeff Lemire.
Yes, that's what I was going to say at the beginning. Like we've done Scott Snyder and we're doing Tom King. I think the next one will be Jeff Lemire, because he's definitely the one. Probably definitely the one we've got a lot to say, whether you like him or don't like him. I think he's definitely interesting because we spoke before we started recording about Sweet Tooth, and just we were saying how kind of people are saying how beautiful Sweet Tooth is on screen, but man, Jeff Lemire's drawings are not beautiful in the comic. They're kind of it's like someone told him he was a really good artist and he's just gone with it, because I like his art. I like his art in things like Roughneck and things where it's like a bit more personal, but it's wow, I hope sounds really bad now, but because he's one of my favorite writers rather. But anyway, some of his artwork is 50-50 to say the least.
Like, I can kind of see what you mean, but then I think when we do talk about Jeff Lemire and I start talking about Royal City, I think that's something that I'm going to like struggle not to get emotional about, because that book and Trillium, like just those 2 books blew me away.
Those Roughneck as well, Essex County. You've got Sweet Tooth. I mean, there's a whole bunch. Sorry, Tom King. Not that you're listening, but if you do listen, this is now turning into the Jeff Lemire podcast. But yes, we'll do a Jeff Lemire one.
We will do Jeff
for
Lemire,
sure.
Yes. Gotcha.
Jesus Christ! By the time we actually do a Jeff Lemire podcast, we'll probably have more TV shows and more comics out than we have time for. So, anyway, what I wanted to touch on before I don't know how much more we're going to go into these things, but I feel
like Strange Adventure, and we're done.
Yeah, Strange Adventures is the. I think I said it last year when I was reading it. Obviously, it's 12 issues. It's coming close to the end. I think issue 9. I think I just pulled issue 9, so there's 3 left. But what's so good about Strange Adventures is, and I've got the director's cut, so I've read the first issue and director's cut. I've got a really lucky to have a signed edition of issue 1 as well from Tom King. He didn't give it to me personally. I paid money for it, but thanks, Tom. And I'm allowed to call him Tom because I have a signed number 1 of Strange Adventures.
It was included.
What's so good about this is, it's he uses 2 artists. He uses Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shana. I don't think I've ever said his name.
Doc Shana?
Shana. We'll just
I think
call
it's
him
Doc
Shana. It's so fucking beautiful, this comic. You've got Adam Strange, who again probably isn't a well-known character to so many people, and he's in the present where he's being there's Mr. Terrific is like a detective basically, and he's trying to work out if what Adam Strange says he's done on this planet called Rann, where he saved everyone basically, is legit. And in the present day, he's written a book about everything, and his wife is super shady. Elena is super shady. Batman gets involved, and he's trying to save his name and his reputation basically in present day. But in the past, you have Doc doing all the past artwork, and sometimes you've got like 2 panels for him and 2 panels for Mitch, and it works so well, and it's so well written by Tom King. And it's when you pick up this TB, because you've not, I think I sent you issue 1, didn't I?
Yeah, I've literally read issue 1 because originally I was just going to wait for the graphic novel, and then you were super kind and sent me the
I got you the director's cut,
which is awesome.
And but it's every issue has got better and better, and it takes, for me, I can easily get put off by a comic sometimes if the wait is long. Like with Doomsday Clock, for instance, it took so long to finish because there's so many delays. This hasn't even been delayed. I think they had like a 2-month break.
I think that was COVID as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was COVID related. But man, it's like worth the wait. It's sort of I got issue 9 before issue 8 came because it got lost. The distributor that we use at the shop, it didn't come. But I had an issue 9 in my hand and I couldn't read issue 8, and it just was like driving me nuts. I was like, I'm just going to read issue 9 and I'll fill in the gaps later. But it's so good, and I would think people are going to read Strange Adventures and think it's up there with Mr. Miracle and Vision, which are the 2 best releases he's done in my eyes. And it's just got all of it again. It's like hard hitting, and it covers a lot of different topics, and it's so good. I can't speak highly of it enough. I've been trying to push it on people, before the TP is even out, which God knows when it's going to be. I guess it's going to be the tail end of the year, maybe. But it's good. It's really good. I do think Tom King is actually getting better and better, which you can have some writers that can hit their highs and then they have a couple of like stinkers shortly after. But I mean, this guy seems to be nailing it. I just think he knows what he's doing. I think he knows how to write these characters, these unknown characters, especially so well, and he just gives them so many layers and just takes them to another level. So
yes,
it's really
definitely. And I think as well, because in the same batch that you sent me the first issue of Strange Adventures, you sent me Rorschach. I can't speak. Rorschach issue 1,
The Curse of Luke. Yes.
And that I also thought was just amazing, and a really good setup for a story. It feels like he's got a really good murder mystery there, and he's being respectful of the material beforehand. I feel like Watchmen is this thing that there's like a very like sensitive thing around, in that it's like if you're touching Watchmen, you've got to be really careful with it because it means so much to so many people, and also the original book is just bloody incredible. So I feel like there is a real sensitivity around it, but I feel like what he's done with that first issue anyway, it was like, yeah, the respect is there, but you're also telling an original story. You've got a new setup there. You've got something going. And also he's basically telling a story in the same world as the HBO series. Like he's acknowledged that as a thing. And I was like, he's nailed that on all fronts. So I feel like, I'm just really excited to see where that goes. But again, I'm waiting for the graphic novel. So it's going to be a wait, I think. But
maybe I'll get you it for Christmas.
Thanks, mate.
If it's out then.
Yeah, it's 12 issues again.
So it's taking ages, yeah. But then, like I said, that and Rorschach, and like they're all ticking along nicely as well. So that at some point there's going to be like a boom of graphic novels by Tom King, I think.
Yeah, but you are right that he has sort of just gone from strength to strength, and I think his I feel like the reason for it is that he's not afraid to shy away from finding the sort of like personality and the rawness of a story. He's not afraid to kind of like, no matter what the character is, whether it's Batman or Mr. Miracle or whoever, he just feels like the story is emotionally driven and it's character driven at all times.
He also elevates other characters. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, you're right. You're totally right. He does really elevate characters. Like he can pull anybody out and sort of be like this, and you just suddenly have an attachment to them.
Well, Mr. Terrific is. I mean, how many comics have you read really that hone in on someone like Mr. Terrific? Here he is, Mr. Terrific, in this comic that has a bit of Batman in it and it has obviously Adam Strange in it. In Darkseid, you could say Mr. Miracle. That's a completely different take on Darkseid. Like, yeah, it's and it works in how big as that Darkseid is. Like, that is
so big.
Yeah, big.
Yeah,
it's I think that's what he's with Vision. He didn't just take Vision to another level, but he also created characters around Vision that are now, with the daughter in Vision. She's in Champions, in a Marvel comic called Champions. And so he's essentially made characters around this, which he's done. It's almost like when you read it with something like Vision, that they've been around for a while as well.
Yeah, I feel like as well. Didn't he do something with Calendar Man in the Batman run? I feel like he had a Calendar Man bit, and I think I remember being like, that was amazing.
Calendar Man doesn't get enough attention.
He's such an awesome character.
It's such a cool character as well.
So cool.
Yeah. So cool. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about Tom King?
I think that's everything. I think we covered it pretty well as well. Good job, us.
Yeah, good. Well done. We are a we. I think again, it'll be one of those things where we just talk, but we'll just be retreading stuff. But for those of you listening that haven't read any of this work, I cannot recommend any more something like Vision or Mr. Miracle. Yeah. Or eventually, when you get your chance to get your hands on something like Strange Adventures, and don't listen to all the shit that goes on about his Batman run, because if you're a comic fan, you need to try it. You need to read it. There's some really nice deluxe editions out of them as well, and you just got to go for it, because you can't read Batman and Catwoman without reading his Batman run.
And if you can find it anywhere, if you can find his Swamp Thing one shot,
the winter special, that must be collected somewhere. Surely, I know I've got the single issue somewhere.
I'm such a huge Swamp Thing fan as well. He's like a character that I always feel like doesn't get enough of like his own thing. I feel like he's always just in a book. And that 80-pager was like, I just want Tom King to do a Swamp Thing book.
Swamp Thing, I love Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. Scott Snyder's Swamp Thing is really good as well.
So
Swamp King. Two things that I was going to say is, we should do a podcast on Watchmen and talk about the film and the comic.
Yes.
It feels like they're screaming out because how much we both love the comic, and I actually love the film and the series. Yeah, of course, the series. Yeah. There you go. That's done. And the other thing I was going to say is about Tom King and Mitch Gerads. They actually have a short in Love Is Love. I don't know if you read that. It's a TP that came out for Pride Month. I don't know, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I forgot they actually had one in there as well. So I read about it recently. I was like, oh yeah, they do. They've been in that as well. So
they are like an awesome duo as well. That feels very much like Snyder Capullo. It just feels like two kind of creative talents.
Yeah, they seem to be really good. They're really funny on Twitter as well. If you ever write something about Tom King's work on Twitter, I think he's called me a nerd a couple of times now on Twitter, which is always heartwarming.
Always good.
But they both come off. I think I've talked openly about there are definitely some of my favorite writers that come off like complete tossers on social media, and they don't give people the time of day. There's one in particular that drives me absolutely mad. But these guys, like someone like Dick. There are these people like Tom King and Scott Snyder and stuff, and they don't have to respond to people. But like I've said, the messages that I've been super. I'm not shy of complimenting someone that I'm extremely fond of, or enjoy their work so much, because it's my comics. You could say football on the side, but this isn't about football. But comics is essentially what I think about most of the day. Online and reading, and it's what I've grown up with and what I love and my job entails. And I'm so lucky to work in comics in some capacity. But when you talk to a writer and you get some feedback from them, it's brilliant. And Tom King, Mitch Gerrits, and people like them and Scott Snyder, it's a big deal. It's a big deal when you love something that they've written, and hence why we're doing a podcast on him, because obviously his stuff is that good. We both agree he is a very good writer.
Yeah, he's I
do say I love him.
I do. I do feel
very fond.
I do feel like if there is anybody listening to it that is sort of dabbling in comics and they're wondering where to go next, I feel like go for anything Tom King, and you'll read something that I feel like will just be really special in terms of comics. Both art and
epic as well. Like, if you hold Mr. Miracle in your hands, I mean, that's a hefty book, isn't it? That's pretty big. It's so Vision, the complete collection of stuff. It feels just pretty big. I mean, I have the deluxe, but I remember the TP of Mr. Miracle. The one you have that's a big read, and you get some gems in it as well, like Scott Free wearing a different superhero T-shirt.
That's so cool. I forgot about that. That is like one of the coolest.
I bookmarked it on my copy. I bookmarked all the bits when he has a Batman and a Flash, and then he even has a reverse Flash. It's so cool.
It is awesome.
All right, that is our Tom King podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope we didn't ramble too much about him and gush over his work too much, although that was the point. So if you're listening, then you probably enjoyed it. Our next episode, we're going back to our in-depth series on Batman, and we're talking about the Tim Burton film Batman Returns, which is an amazing film. We're joined by Neil from Get Your Comic On, and he was our sponsor at the beginning of the episode as well. You can find them at Get Your Comic On at Twitter and Instagram as well. And you can find us on social media as well, Twitter and Instagram at ConsistentlyPod, and on YouTube by simply searching for Consistently AK Podcast. We stream on all podcast services, with each episode coming out on Wednesdays. If you're an Apple Podcast subscriber, subscribe, extra content. So that's it from us. So Nick, thanks as always.
Always a pleasure, dude. That was a good episode. I really enjoyed that. I feel like it's been a while since I've talked comics as well. So
yeah, me too. Well, we'll definitely do a Jeff Lemire one in the upcoming future. That made sense. Always to say that made sense. And I'm looking forward to talking all things Batman Returns with you and Neil on the next episode. Yes, we could talk about Penguin.
One step closer to Batman and Robin, sorry. What more do you want? Can't wait. So excited.
I'm not excited. Yes. I'm not excited. But I will pretend that I'm enthusiastic in the next few episodes.
Think of all the Mr. Freeze you're going to see. It's just, he's the best.
Yes. Okay then. Sure. You take care, Nick.
You too, dude. Have a good one.
Thanks everyone for listening. Take care all as well.